Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show. Hello, welcome in. We are back. Guerrilla Sports Off Ice Post Game live. Jesse Montano, Meghan, Angley, and Meghan. It's been a while since we've had a game to talk about. It feels like. So we're gonna get into this game, obviously, but just nice to be back talking about an Avs game with you. How you doing?
I'm doing good. It is good to be back and watching some Avalanche hockey. Feels like there's a lot of questions left for them to answer coming out of the break. So it's exciting to just see it get going again.
Yeah, we're into the final 25 games here. Avs looking to grab as many points as they can, and they needed points tonight. They did not get them. They fall 2-1 to the Nashville Predators. In Nashville, they will fly to St. Louis tonight, take on the St. Louis Blues. Same time tomorrow. The Blues also playing tonight, so both teams will be coming off a back-to-back. But Meghan, 2-1 in this one. It felt like the Avs controlled the bulk of the play. Overall, give credit to UC Saros, played really well after a really bad Four Nations performance for UC Saros. This felt a little bit like a statement game for him. Avs couldn't get anything to go, but I don't know. I didn't have many huge complaints about what we saw from them tonight up until the late going, but we'll get into that later. Your overall thoughts just off the top, Avs dropping this one 2-1 to Nashville Predators.
I saw one of the kind of questions or comments that had come through from Katie was about if this is one of those kind of trust the process games. And I do feel overall I like a lot of the things that the Avs did. And I liked a lot of things across the whole lineup. I think lately the things I've liked about the Avs have come from the top of the lineup. And so walking away from this one, there's a lot to build upon. I think you're obviously seeing a team shaking off the rust in some ways. But I also felt like from the first period on, there was compete. They were battling along the wall to try and win some of these puck battles. And so I liked seeing that pretty much from the whole of the group. And that's why I'm not too distraught over the result. But I also know that these games just matter more and more with each passing day.
Yeah, the hard part for this one is it's what Jared Bednar told me a couple weeks ago on the road. He said, "Look, I'm tired of getting I'm tired of not getting the result. Yeah, we have good games. That's all good and well. We need results. We need the points right now, and that's the part where what you feel about tonight is. I'm with you. I don't think there are bad things. I actually even really liked the pop early on. I thought there was good energy. I didn't think guys looked rusty at all, and yet." You just don't come up with the result. And I guess that's the disappointing part. Were you a little bit surprised maybe with the lack of offense from both sides? I really was. I was expecting a little bit. We've seen some high scoring games already today in the NHL. I was expecting maybe some rust. Goalie's not quite back in it yet. 2-1. Were you at all surprised by the fact that defense was pretty impressive from both sides?
Not to take a shot at Nashville, they just rightfully won this game, but I was a little surprised that they made things as difficult for the Avs as they did, because over their last stretch here, they've been doing a lot of things well offensively, and defensively, Nashville has struggled a little bit. And so for them to have locked it down against the Avs, who otherwise did a lot of things to create high danger opportunities throughout the whole game, UC Saros, excellent goaltending performance on top of it all, but great defense structure from Nashville, too, to make getting to inner ice really difficult for the Avs because they were pushing for second and third chances. It was just hard to get, despite being able to put the puck on net. And from Colorado's side, they did a lot of the right things to make it hard for Nashville to get any easy goals, too. I really like to see that because Wedgewood, it's his first game back after missing some time, so I think he would have needed a little extra support coming back from the break and having missed a little time because of injury. So in some ways, I'm not surprised by the Avs' defensive effort. That's sort of what they should be committed to doing on a nightly basis. But Nashville surprised me a little bit because they played a solid game.
And I know the block shots, and I'm going to look at where the number finished right now. 21. that's not the highest number that we've seen this season for a team play against the Avs, but it felt like they had 21 block shots, and it felt like they were in every passing lane, every backdoor pass. There was a Nashville stick somewhere in the mix. So, like you said, give credit to them. They did a good job getting in lanes, and even late when the Avs were looking for that play going across the ice, when they had an empty net, Nashville was on top of it. I think two guys got a stick on it before they were able to get it up and out, and essentially, ran out the clock. Like I said, 21 blocks, but it felt like they were everywhere. Scott Wedgewood, I actually thought had a really good game. The shot from Justin Barron, maybe you don't love, but there's a lot of traffic there. He's got a hard time tracking it. We hadn't seen Scott Wedgewood in a while, not only the break, but he dealt with some injury stuff. I thought you liked what you got from him in net tonight.
Certainly. And this is where I'll go back to what the Avs did well to support Scott Wedgewood, and that is limiting the opportunities for Nashville to put pucks on net. And so Nashville trailed in the shots battle this whole game, and they weren't able to do very much down to the third period where I think they only had 2 shot attempts on net. And so that's a credit to the Avs doing some things well defensively, but also committing to time in the offensive zone. And they played a strong possession game that kept the puck out of their end for the most part. And I think that helped to support Wedgewood. But I also don't hate his performance in net. I even look at the Justin Barron goal, and there's like a 6-body conga line to the net, 2 layers of screens to get that, line of sight just completely taken away from him. And so that was a little bit of a tough one because they moved that puck low to high so quickly too that it was just a play that unfolded quickly. Same thing with the Marchessault goal, and Taves nearly had a stick on that puck at the crease. So honestly, I like a lot of things from the defensive effort and Scott Wedgewood's night, especially coming back after having missed some time.
Yeah, Vaguely Sober with the super chat, $1.99 here. Vaguely good to see you again. Back at a post game after the break. Looked like the little Wedgewoods recovered. Yes, he was back to his normal happy self the next day at practice, and it looked like he was moving around all right out there today after taking a sensitive shot the other day at practice. Thank you for the super chat. Dang, you made a point there that I wanted to build on, but I forgot. So, anyways, just going to move on. You mentioned the defense. We talked so much about Sam Malinsky before the break. It felt like he was playing some better hockey. You and I talked about the fact that we felt like he was a player that was really going to benefit from the time off. Why? Because this is a player in his first NHL season, comes from playing college hockey, played a little bit of American League, a little bit of American League at the end of his college season, then played in the AHL full-time last year, but the schedules just aren't the same. The NHL is just naturally going to be a little bit more rigorous. Stack on top of that, the fact they have a 2-week break mixed in there this year, Meghan, really compounded things at the beginning of the schedule. So this has been a workload unlike anything Sam Malinsky's ever dealt with. 2 weeks off, not just the goal, the Avs' lone goal in this game. But I felt like this was one of his better games, elevated to play with Sam Girard, with Josh Manson out of the lineup. You mentioned defense. I thought he was someone that stood out tonight in a positive way for me, at least.
He certainly did, and it predates even the goal. I think in the first period, there was a huge hit from Shen on Malinsky along the wall, and it seemed like a splash of cold water to the face. The reaction that he had to it just inspired even higher level of compete. And I think when I think about the players that Jared Bednar sometimes favors in a bottom pair role, like a Middleton, they find a way to be loud on a nightly basis. For Middleton, it's going to be a heavy physical presence. And Malinsky, his game grew a little bit quiet because the offensive side of his game had waned a little bit. And so the worry was he needs to find a way to be noticeable shift by shift. And it doesn't have to be goal scoring every shift. And what I liked is that level of compete. He kind of found what was authentic to him as a player and his identity as a player. And that was putting pucks on net and moving the puck, distributing the puck. You know, you look at the shot attempts for Malinsky tonight, and it's among some of the highest we've seen yet. And that starts before he gets the goal. That's him getting rewarded for doing the right things. And so there's a little bit of confidence, too, that you see him playing with after he does put the puck in the back of the net.
Yep.
And it's so important for Malinsky's game because it is different from a Keaton Middleton, but it's still important for him to show up, and it's just going to look a bit different for him. And I think he did that tonight.
The part that I think, one of the parts that I think makes a game like tonight disappointing in terms of the result that you get. And again, when you're talking in terms of needing the results, having the sentiment of, yeah, you played a good game, you followed a good process is great. You need the results. Part of what I think makes that one sting a little bit more tonight, Meghan, is the fact that you do get the contribution from Sam Malinsky. Logan O'Connor hits a post late in the game, gives you a really good opportunity. Nathan MacKinnon played really well. 8 shots on goal tonight for Nathan MacKinnon. Cale Makar adds another 4. I thought they were really good. I thought Devon Taves looked like he had jumped right back into things. And really, Marty Netchis, I didn't think he was bad. Obviously, the offense was a little bit more stifled tonight. There wasn't as much free flowing for Netchis to kind of get into that game that we've seen in the games that were leading into this or into the break. Now as we're coming out of it. So, take it with a grain of salt here and there, but overall, I felt like you did get a pretty strong performance from your top guys as well. You got your top guys that played well. You got production from the depth. I think that just makes it sting just a little bit more.
It does, because I was taking mental note throughout the game of who I'm noticing. Like, I'm certainly looking at the bottom of the lineup. I want to notice the third line. I want to notice the fourth line. I want this second line to get going. And off the top, Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar, and Taves returned from Four Nations break. It's clear that they came from a high intensity just now. Like, just the way they're playing does feel like a different level from the rest of everyone else.
100%.
To include Nathan MacKinnon on an individual level, one of the criticisms in our comment section was that he couldn't win a faceoff, but he walks away 50% even at the faceoff dot, and he's taking the bulk of the faceoffs. Usually you see Jared Bednar split that up a little bit throughout the lineup, but he has been digging in the faceoff dot here lately, and he's earned some trust to take on the brunt of those, and he walks away 50% at the end of the night. Obviously, I think you start to tally some of those losses more because they're chasing this game, but Nathan MacKinnon, in addition to 8 shots on net, doing what he needs to in draws. And I think the compete was there from his line. Netchis has an opportunity blocked late in the game when they're trying to kill a penalty and simultaneously find the game tying goal. Cale Makar, another player who had several opportunities that were just blocked by a Nashville team that played pretty well in their own end. So top line, they're showing up. The top pairing, they're showing up. And then past that, second line contributes on the Malinsky goal. It starts in their own end. Mittelstadt, he absorbs some contact along the wall to angle the puck up ice in transition to get Persson and Drouin going. They use their speed to get that puck into the O zone. The drop pass from Drouin to Malinsky makes that goal happen. I still need to and would like to see more from that second line.
Yeah.
But you can't say that they didn't do anything in this game. They factor on the only goal scored for this team. Similarly, I'm noticing that Kelly OC line throughout the night because of their battle and their compete in the offensive zone on the forecheck. And then, of course, the Logan O'Connor chance late in the game that nearly does tie it. So I'm making mental note of them. Third line is where I'm a little iffy. I'm noticing them in a similar way to the fourth line, but it isn't quite as effective. But you do see them getting involved in a skirmish after a whistle below the goal line in their own end late in the game. So their heart and their passion is certainly in it. And I say this because this is a more complete effort than we've seen. I walked away from the Edmonton game thrilled by the performances of players like Nathan MacKinnon and how good Netchis has been for this team, but I wasn't really able to talk about anybody else. I'm glad that I have this much to say about some of these other players.
So here, and I agree with you on a lot of those points. Here was my issue tonight with that second line, because you're right. You can't say they didn't do anything tonight. They factor on the goal. Jonathan Drouin, nice drop pass, good awareness. That line, and really Casey Mittelstadt in particular, still just too many stretches where they go invisible. Too many stretches, too many shifts where they aren't a factor and they go out there and just kind of burn gas for 45 seconds and then get off the ice. That's just the part that I feel like if you're looking, I think there was a lot of good things to take out of the game tonight. But again, if this was game 20, you can say, hey, there's a lot of good things to take out of this and move forward. fact of the matter is you've now got 24 games to go. You're sitting in a wild card spot relatively comfortably, but you can't keep dropping games. You need to pick up these points. And when I look at this game tonight, that's the part that I think is tough, that you are like, you're spot on. You do get the contribution from Sam Malinsky. You do get some really good shifts. I think I'm with you. I really liked the O'Connor Kelly line tonight, but when Nathan MacKinnon's line comes off the ice and you roll that Casey Mittelstadt line out there and you want to keep that momentum going, I just felt there were too many shifts where it fell flat and the Avs either weren't able to generate anything or play started going the other direction. Ice started tilting the other way. And that's what I think Casey Mittelstadt and his, whoever he has on his line or whoever the Avs end up having at 2C, that's the problem they need to solve for. We need to be able to carry momentum from that first line into a shift with the second line. And right now you just get too many empty calorie shifts from Casey Mittelstadt. And tonight, the Parson and Drouin.
It's not that I disagree with the concern around Casey Mittelstadt. Separate from this game, it's still the issue that they need to address. I just don't know that it's being applied fairly because of all these other things we know to be true about Casey Mittelstadt, because his line doesn't factor on any of the goals against. I'm seeing, too, against a Nashville team that is blocking lanes to the net and making it difficult to get second and third attempts. Casey Mittelstadt, though maybe not winning some of the battles outright, is able to reclaim the puck with a keep at the blue line, I think earlier in the game, first or second period, thereabouts. And so I'm noticing them as a line. And again, they factor on the only goal for in this game. It's hard for me to key in on Casey Mittelstadt, his individual performance or that line, because everyone fell a little bit flat, because everyone is having their attempts blocked, because Nashville just defensively was really sound tonight. Again, though, I want to emphasize that it's still the area of the lineup that needs help, because it's followed by a third line that also falls flat. It isn't doing very much. And so it's all working together to reveal why this is a problem, because you're absolutely right. This was a game where the Avs wanted to keep at least within a 2-point striking distance of Minnesota. Minnesota wins tonight. Avs lose. Now it's a 4-point distance. They're trying to climb in the Central Division, and these games are important because it's a back-to-back tomorrow against St. Louis. It doesn't get easier for the Avs, though they do typically play well in the second leg of a back-to-back. They're not doing themselves any favors to have a second-line center who's not playing to the level of a second-line center. And so I want to affirm that I do agree that it is still a problem, because when you're in a game where it is tough to get the second and third chances because Nashville's blocking your attempts, then you need a little pop. And you're hoping maybe it's Nathan MacKinnon, maybe it's Cale Makar, or your second-line centerman, Casey Mittelstadt. And too many times this season, it hasn't been him. That's not the guy that you can look to have the pop when you need it, when maybe the first line is being stopped. And so I think it's a completely fair criticism, especially when you evaluate the whole of this season and what it has been for Casey Mittelstadt. Simply put, it hasn't been good enough. But maybe I'm just trying to be too nice here.
Well, and I'm not trying to specifically call it Casey Mittelstadt, although, unfortunately for Casey Mittelstadt, he is the person that's in that 2C slot right now. And so there's obviously a lot of attention put there, but no, you're right. Here's how I look at, you and I have talked about this before on shows in the past at different points in the season. When you're talking about depth production, there's times where we get caught up in the conversation ourselves, in the comments online, whatever it is, about, these depth players aren't scoring enough. They're not contributing enough. Oh my gosh, we need to be getting more depth goals every night. And it's like, well, no. If your depth players are scoring every single night, then they're not your depth guys. They're your top guys, because depth guys aren't supposed to score every night. So, your third and fourth line, I'm not expecting, rock star nights for 60 minutes and production every night. But you are 100% correct, Megan, in that what I'm really pointing out is that the second and third line, they're just not being as effective as you need them to be for a second and third line on a night like tonight. I'm with you. I don't think this was Casey Mittelstadt's worst game. Jonathan Drouin, the second line, factors in on that second goal. Juuso Parssinen had a nice chance, I believe, in the first period. It definitely was not an overall, total negative. I'm just saying that when you're looking at what this team needs to really contend down the stretch, your second and third lines really have to be better. I think your fourth line, is doing what you're asking it to do. Your top guys tonight definitely showed up. You need more out of the middle part of your lineup here, and you need a little bit more out of your second line, and you need a little bit more out of your third line. I'm not saying they were terrible, but those are just areas that to get the Avs where they want to go, really, to me, the way I'm kind of looking at it is that second line is kind of acting as a third line right now, and you need someone to kind of step in and be that true second line. If what Casey Mittelstadt, Jonathan Drouin, and Juuso Parssinen did tonight, if they were the Avs third unit, I'd be really thrilled with that, for them to be the Avs, second line that's rolling out there after Nathan MacKinnon and company. I just want a little bit more, and maybe that's me being overly critical, but I feel like I just want a little bit more on that.
No, it goes back to the issue of depth scoring, specifically Josh Cove in the comment section says depth scoring in general isn't and hasn't been good enough. That's a struggling Nashville team and you need these points. It is right. The bigger picture is the problem. We still haven't seen a full forward group as intended. Like with Val Nichushkin not in the lineup, then this hasn't been even the full top six picture that we had hoped for. And we were once looking at Kiviranta, Kelly, OC as a third line that we knew was really supposed to be a fourth line one day. Now they're the fourth line one day, but the third line is not a third line still. And so it is like the lack of production too from a player like Ross Colton, who started the year and then even returned from injury, producing at a high clip, has been concerning because it is sort of leaving this hole in the middle of the lineup that adds emphasis to the lack of production from the second line, especially in a night when there was just one goal difference keeping them from this game. Because you're looking at the top line, sure, they don't contribute with goal support, but they will because they do. Historically, they have all season.
Right. Well, and they drove the bus offensively tonight. Like they weren't able to actually break through. But again, 12, 13 shots combined between just Cale Makar and Nathan MacKinnon. And again, give credit to UC Saros throughout this whole game. I thought he was lights out. And yes, as people are pointing out in the comments, Val Nichushkin comes back. That bumps a guy down out of that top six, Juuso Parssinen. And if he continues to play, I think what's been a positive surprise for this Avalanche team, if he continues to play like that, yeah, you can move him down the lineup and you maybe feel a little bit better about what you've got in the bottom six. But look, right now with what you've got with Val Nichushkin, the issue that the Avs are dealing with is you got to deal with the team that you've got available to you right now. Jared Bednar made the comment to us just the other day, Meghan, that we still haven't seen this full team the way that they intended it to be put together. And you mentioned that off the top. So you have to make do with what you've got here. And to me, the only answer is a couple players individually needing to elevate their game. I think Jonathan Drouin being paired with Casey Mittelstadt is good because we've seen Jonathan Drouin be someone that can take his game to a different level. But Casey Mittelstadt's got to take that on himself, take his game up a level. Ross Colton, take his game up a level like what we saw in the early part of the season. And they're going to be able to help start digging the Avs out of it. But Meghan, we're going to get into it on Monday. March 7th is the trade deadline. And all these conversations right here are what's being had by Chris McFarland, Joe Sakic in that front office of how do we handle this? Is what we're seeing out of Casey Mittelstadt enough? Is what we're seeing out of the back end of our team enough? And those are the things that we're looking at in a tight game like this.
It's a great point because some of the concern in the comments and questions that we received were around, if this was the team that we went to the playoffs with tomorrow, what is your confidence level in them? And it would not be very high, but I also don't for a second think this is the team that they go to the playoffs with tomorrow. Mm-hmm. They're going to make another move of some kind. It's just the reality. And frankly, I think they've identified Casey Mittelstadt as not a great fit for this team right now. We've talked about the reasons as to why at length. This isn't to key in on Casey Mittelstadt harshly,
right.
I think that we're in that room and we have been for a little bit now. So I'm just counting on this team looking a bit different come playoff time. And there's parts of it, though, that I think will remain the same. And that's where, on a night like tonight, I do have a little bit of confidence in the process and some of the existing pieces
Totally.
outside of the top line. It gives me confidence. Great UC Saros night too. You mentioned that a little bit ago, and I wanted to talk about it. Expected goals against was somewhere around 2.82. Only one gets past him. So great defensive effort in front of him. Great goaltending performance. I want to remind everyone that they just didn't get the result that they wanted. It's not even necessarily the result that they deserved, because I think they played better than the final result showed. As we've seen with the Avs this year, sometimes it feels like they don't play to the appropriate level of their competition. So this is obviously a struggling Nashville team with typically defensive weaknesses that they weren't able to take advantage of tonight. It just makes then St. Louis that much more important, because it's a really similar story. And they have a chance to change their story tomorrow.
Well, that's the nice thing about the 82 game schedule, is you do get a chance to turn right around and erase this tomorrow. But I just wanted to make the point, just to put a bow on the Casey Mittelstadt stuff, because like you said, I wasn't trying to turn that into us just tooling on Casey Mittelstadt for 5 minutes. He's getting traded. No. But here is what one of the things that you and I talked about going into the break was Casey Mittelstadt needs this break. He's talked about how this is a stretch of hockey unlike anything he's ever dealt with in his career, going back to when he was young, where the offense just dries up completely. The reason that for me, I'm now talking, we're having this conversation of, what is Chris McFarland, Joe Sakic talking about behind the scenes on a night like tonight in regards to Casey Mittelstadt, is because I really wanted to see something coming out of the break. Casey Mittelstadt with, some rejuvenated jump in his step, and really come out and have a strong, really impactful game. He didn't have a bad game tonight, no doubt, but he's got to build tomorrow. And tomorrow I want to see him be more impactful. If he wants to stick around and prove that he can grow into the 2C that this team needs, whatever he did tonight, positive night analytically, had some moments that I thought he flashed early on, but it needs to continue getting better from here. And to your point, he can start with that tomorrow night in St. Louis.
Because here's the other side of it. Sam Malinsky answered that call, comes out of the break with a great game, a strong game. He's in an elevated position from what we've seen, and it's one that he didn't particularly thrive in on that second pairing earlier in the season. He changed his story tonight, and obviously he has to do it more than once to really earn that place in the conversation. But for Casey Mittelstadt, I feel pretty settled on the fact that it might not be a great fit for him in Colorado, but I still want what's best for him as a person, player, and I want what's best for the organization. And all roads point back to Casey Mittelstadt needing to come out of this break strong, because his next destination, whether it just be continuing on with the Avs or getting a change of scenery elsewhere, is dependent on his play even still. And so it is in his best interest to be a strong player right now and command a little bit more attention and a little bit more desirability around the league. And it only benefits everybody involved to do that.
Well, and there was someone who was in the comments recently talking about how, we had both said, oh no, ride it out with Casey Mittelstadt. And now they're saying, oh, now you've changed your tune.
I saw it.
And again, it's, as we've talked about before, and as I'll say again right now, he is a player that if you can't find an absolute clear upgrade at the deadline, which, by the way, spoiler, is a likely scenario here, that you don't find a deal that you say yes, this is clearly better than Casey Mittelstadt. This is still a player with upside. This is still a player with 32 points this season. And it's a player that you've seen play well in your system before. However, what has changed is that we've now seen this go on longer than we all expected it to, without it taking any type of reasonable turn where it's like, okay, he's clearly coming out of this. And so now, you are at a point where, to Megan's point earlier, this isn't a roster that you're ultra comfortable with going into the playoffs. You're a wild card team for a reason. You want to get better. You want to find areas to improve. And I think if the Avs can find a way to improve on Casey Mittelstadt, they should do that. We don't need to spend any more time talking about Casey Mittelstadt. Meghan, do you have any other thoughts on this game here tonight before we take a couple questions here from Twitter?
No, let's take some questions.
All right. And we didn't even get into, and I'll get into it real quick. I told you right before we started, I hated the way that the Avs ended this game. You take the unfortunate penalty. It's the double minor. You know, what can you do? I didn't like the way that they played the next 90 seconds plus. They went into super penalty kill mode, sitting back, no forecheck, just kind of letting the Preds sit there and chew up seconds off the clock. There was at one moment that Yoel Kiviranta looked like he was really unsure of what he wanted to do, if he wanted to try to force him to do something or sit back. And then it wasn't till less than a minute left they put some of the big guns out there and, you know, attempt to get Scott Wedgewood off. I just thought it was a really weird way to play that final 2.5 minutes there. But, you know, I don't know what was discussed on the bench of how they wanted to approach that. I just found that really weird.
Yeah, like they win the initial draw at the start of that kill, which is great. And then the play is offsides, and the next draw they lose. And so I think there were nerves, and that's where I'll give them a little bit of an out with respect to rust. Like, I think there was this panic of we don't want to ensure we're the reason that we lose this game because it's still within reach. So we want to be smart and play this smartly. And I think it was erring on the side of caution maybe a little bit too much in not wanting to make mistakes. But obviously you can't come up with a goal without being a little bit bold and risky in that situation either. So I think it's also something kind of unusual that they don't typically practice. So I won't key in on it too harshly. I think they were just trying to be cautious.
Truthfully, I'm going through these questions here now, and we've addressed a lot of this stuff.
Okay, you're right, because I was referencing a few people's questions.
Yeah. The one thing that I will ask you about, though, is what are your thoughts on, you know, Jared Bednar likes to keep his pairs, so, you know, keep maybe Nathan McKinnon, Marty Netchus together, maybe Drouin and Mittelstadt, but your thoughts on maybe mixing up some of the forward lines a little bit beyond what we saw here tonight?
Well, since the second line has not inspired enough to keep it completely intact, and I'm envisioning a future with Juuso Parssinen on a third line, I think we should see what that looks like and maybe elevate Ross Colton for a game and see if he can get some of that puck touch back into his game that's been missing and has hurt his overall production, playing with Mittelstadt and Drouin. But honestly, it doesn't even have to look like that specifically. The issue is the middle six in particular, so that should be the area that he can afford to tinker with, because it's not like they're doing anything so perfectly right now that he can't afford to break any of those two lines up at the moment.
I do wonder just a little bit if you try a Lehkonen, Mittelstadt, Colton line, and you put Drouin with Nate and Marty Netchus, and just give Ross Colton a couple guys that just like, yeah, you're going to shoot and make plays on this. They're going to grind out. They're going to do, you know, they're going to go below the goal line. They're going to go to the front of the net. You got to be the hands and the shooter, you know, on this line, and then put the you know, Nathan McKinnon, Marty Netchus playing off each other so well out there with a playmaker like Drouin. I don't know, maybe try that to get more out of Casey Mittelstadt.
Yeah, you know, it's tough. We've been in this room now for a good amount of the season. Like, well, what can we do to get more out of Casey Mittelstadt?
Right,
sometimes it comes at the expense of someone else too.
Yep.
Like his Drouin's game maybe grown quieter than we would have seen it if he was playing up on the line with Nate, for example. So it stinks because you want to get the most out of your players, but you also don't want to, in trying to inspire another, sacrifice something from the other. So
right.
It is a bit of a juggling act, but I would love to see a player like Drouin get some more opportunity, and a Ross Colton temporarily, because I think that he needs to get his groove back.
Get his groove back. Ross Colton looking to get his groove back. I think that's going to do it for tonight. Meghan, you and I will be back tomorrow in studio. First intermission report, second intermission report, and post game as the Avs are taking on the St. Louis Blues. Same time, 4 p.m. Mountain tomorrow. So make sure you are tuning in right here. Guerrilla Sports, like I said, first intermission and second intermission report, as well as a post game live coming to you from the Guerrilla Sports studios, powered by Trusted American Mortgage. Meghan, any final thoughts on this disappointing result for the Colorado Avalanche here tonight?
No.
That is gonna do it. She's Meghan Angley. I'm Jesse Montano. Like I said, same time, same place tomorrow, but earlier instead also. Have a good one, everyone. We will see you then.